welcome to One Life Mechanics and talking about plant magic. So, I think one of the main purposes of human beings is to be the gardeners of Earth, meaning that we are here to caretake, to figure out where each tree and flower and vine goes. It's a giant garden, and it's more than that because it's a sentient being also. If we think about trees and plants and such as gravitational wells with electrical current flowing through them, you can maybe think of them all as potential computer chips for a larger electrical flow, because certainly there's electrical differential between the leaves and the roots of trees, which you can research. They've even made music from it. Scientists are very amusing creatures. The further they go into any subject, it just sort of becomes art at some point. Less scientific, more artistic, as it were. That's true for any art form, also becomes more scientific, and so it is with gardening. But electrical flows through trees, that is a real thing. The flow goes all the way up from the trunk, down from the leaves, back to the ground, and it just creates this power cycle so that when you're sitting underneath a tree, all kinds of interesting things happen. I mean, that is how gravity was discovered, is it not? Underneath a tree. It's a very inspiring place and basically a very magical one. Whatever you want to consider magic and science to be, they're very interconnected and related. So one of the ways to introduce plants into your magical world is by placing a seed underneath your tongue for 9 minutes and letting it imprint with your DNA, which I know sounds kind of out there, but there's a lot of things that science has not explored, and even more that we do not understand in the world. So gardeners have maybe heard of this little trick of putting the seed underneath the tongue by just listening very carefully. Once again, meditation is one of those things that draws a person into the deeper mysteries of the universe. So one book series I really want to bring to your attention is The Ringing Cedars of Russia by Vladimir Merget. I will post a link for this audio series on YouTube, but it is an amazing series that was really written by someone truly extraordinary, and one that I would kind of like to expound upon today, specifically focusing on plant magic. And in the series, Ringing Cedars of Russia, she talks about putting the seed underneath your tongue and imprinting it with your intentions. So when this is done, it can create a space of love for you and, say, a tree or an affinity, an electrical affinity based on a biological imprint with intention. It doesn't have to have intention, but it's going to imprint with you, your energy signature to begin with. So when people sit underneath trees that were planted in this way, or at least an intention for them, she talks about planting trees after conceiving children so that when a person sits under their tree, that tree gleans energy from the stars, the sun, the moon, from water, from wind, and sends all of that energy to that tree's person and gives them feelings of vitality, inspiration, understanding, a sense of belonging, of home and hope. So when a garden is planted in this way, and it doesn't have to be every plant, it can be, one in a row or one in that area, because there's still electrical current that travels from plant to plant in the soil. So it's going to imprint with a signature to begin with. The concept of growing an intention into a plant creates a garden filled with what is basically magic, because that purpose grows with every season or maybe with each passing year. That is what I'm calling garden feng shui, or feng shui of the planet, creating electrical pathways or circuitry on the surface of the planet intentionally is actually an important part of allowing for larger and more interesting things to happen. Maybe non physical beings like fairies definitely use garden spaces as their own personal playground, and they most certainly serve you if you are the one that has planted this particular garden. Their influence is not trivial, particularly in matters of love, which is perhaps another video and story to begin with. But I think one of the best animes that really kind of touches on the dynamics of non physical beings with the physical world and human relations is the show called Mushishi, which I will also link when I get a chance. But these plants, they can create a space of love and order and grow all of your intentions while also being functional. If you can imagine growing a fence line, a line of trees that are very closely planted together as saplings, their trunks will grow together and form a fence line that grows stronger with each passing year instead of weaker, which is what we traditionally have. It may take up more room, but it also produces oxygen and becomes basically an impenetrable barrier to any kind of intruders, or maybe even creating a magical wall. It could even be a magical shrubbery line covered in blackberries and made beautiful jams and pies every year while keeping out intruders. That is most certainly a magical phenomenon, if there was one, because there is a very close link between the physical and the non-physical worlds. And trees can be some of the deepest magic because they can hold intentions for years, for generations even. And when you imprint your DNA or your intention on these plants, it's almost as if a little piece of you lives just a little bit longer with a different kind of story and a different kind of intention. So we are creating energy pathways with the different kinds of gardening that we do. And when we do this, it heals the land with purpose and creates an amazing food forest for people to live in. Like, there's so many feelings of anxiety in this world, and depression, and feeling loneliness. None of that exists when we choose to have a relationship with nature, because everything in life, being alive, is all about relationships. When we put our hands in the soil, we are absorbing different microbes from the soil, and they in turn create an increase in serotonin in brain chemistry. So you actually feel happier when you're gardening because of bacteria and different microbes. Similarly, when we regenerate the land, or even maybe very old stories of many native cultures talk about healing waters, meaning that you go into a hot spring or a body of water, and because it's so electrically, magnetically charged, it realigns the body and cures illnesses quickly. That is something that we could return to if we choose to make each spot healed, magical, intention filled all over again. But also to regenerate our relationship with the land, because what we do outside in the garden creates all kinds of new life and relationships that maybe we weren't considering before, like the fairies, but also more concrete things like the monarch butterfly, where if we here in the south of the US planted milkweed all over the place like it used to wildly grow, then we would have a return of the monarchs. And those butterflies, in a few generations, travel all the way from South America through the US to Canada. It's a giant migration that takes several generations of butterfly life and creates a pathway for all kinds of different things. They're food for all kinds of different animals. They create festivals in South America for these creatures. But also the idea that when a butterfly flaps its wings, a hurricane spins on the other side of the world. And while we may not be attracting hurricanes with our intention, understand that such a small act as planting a plant somewhere may have a much larger effect on the natural world. So consider what those subtle energies, how they may affect you, and how you can play with them. Maybe planting juniper trees in a certain part of the yard so that when the wind blows, it blows towards your house and your house is filled with the scent of juniper in the summer. That's a beautiful thing to consider when studying all kinds of permaculture and how to plant your world in such a way that you flourish the most strongly. When we are disconnected from the land, as many times in history we have been, they suffered greatly. And when land ownership was allowed for certain races or maybe certain economic classes, they prospered again, they grew, they were happy again because of their connection to the earth. We have gotten so far away from this one basic food source that we have huge feelings of anxiety, insecurity, a lack of power. When you are working the land, there is a sense of personal power because you can affect physical reality. You can see it. You can see it change. The garden, when it grows something new, coming outside in the morning becomes this event of discovery and peaceful awareness, a subtle energy appreciation. So when you are considering your own happiness, when you are considering what it means to be human or how to help yourself be more subtly aware or interactive, or maybe you just want to have more impact, allow yourself to be free, to plant a tree where maybe it doesn't normally belong, such as in an esplanade or a water right-of-way that doesn't already have fruit trees, but you can grow one and put one there. Humans are meant to be free. They are meant to freely create. And when we put all these rules in place, even in our own minds of what we can and cannot do, or who will tell us no, that is the moment when we limit ourselves and our own personal power. But anytime we interact with the land, you will discover what it means to affect change and to feel power and less anxious because you know where your food is coming from, or you know where you're going to lay your head tonight because it is already decided. You've picked out a spot on the earth that you like the most, and you have chosen to be its guardian, its keeper, and allow it to sustain you, to help you become more abundant in the world. That is the interplay of co-creation with nature and the larger universe. Because in that space, you create a space of love. You create a space where a family can thrive. You create a space of inspiration, and it becomes your own universal library because you have more deep insight, more grounded awareness of the larger teachings that the universe is constantly pouring out into the larger universe. You have greater connection to it. It's almost as if you purchased your library card to access everywhere. It becomes more of a portal when generations of the same family choose to live in relatively the same place. So just notice that interaction. Notice how connected you are to the land, to plants, to the magic that creates the entire world, creates life and sustains it. Because the trees themselves want to sustain you. There are a few stories of people eating fruits from a very personal family garden, um, like the ones I've mentioned. And those people become very sick after eating those fruits because they picked them without permission. Like the land is very aware of your presence and very consciously, sentiently willing to protect you and create all kinds of ways that it might benefit your presence. That's another story from Ringing Cedars of Russia, in case you were curious. But things like that are not uncommon in a more magically created world. So when you put intention into plants and put them into seeds and choose to grow them for your own personal benefit, you benefit everyone else around you. So I really hope that you consider what it means to be a steward of the earth, to become more aware of how you can interact and play with the energies of the universe. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time on One Life Mechanics.